Hey guys, welcome to another lesson video. Today we're going to be continuing our study of medieval Chinese dynasties by studying the Song Dynasty. This dynasty lasted from around the year 907 to about 1279. Let's go ahead and get started. First off, from those years we just mentioned, the Song Dynasty is going to dominate. This empire is going to rule at a time of a lot of great prosperity in China. Prosperity is a word that means things are going very well economically. People are wealthier and life is better. Now, the question remains, why was the Song Dynasty so prosperous? And historians have really pointed to four main reasons. That's what we're going to cover in the rest of this lesson. Number one is strong government. Two would be the changes in agriculture that occurred. Three, the growth of trade and commerce in the area, and fourth, the growth of cities. Let's start looking at each of these reasons. First off, the Song Dynasty had a very strong government. Their government was organized by using the civil service exam to choose the government officials who would work in these different jobs to keep the government functioning properly. This Song Dynasty also made these tests a lot more available to different people. This means the Song Dynasty created a specific type of government called a meritocracy. Now, while there was still an emperor, so this is still an empire, the way that the government ran was through something called a meritocracy. This is when you have the government functioning by using government officials who get their jobs based on their merit or ability, instead of who their family is or how wealthy or what kind of connections they have. Now, if you've never heard this word before, don't worry, you're not alone. It's not a word we use very often, but if you've ever earned a merit badge before, maybe in Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or for something that you've done, it means you earned that badge because you did something to earn it. Like maybe you learned how to build a fire, or maybe you learned how to sew on a button. So in this case, the government is giving jobs to people based on the idea that they have earned that job through their abilities based on the civil service exam. So something to keep in mind. Now, the next thing that's going to make the Song Dynasty so successful would be the changes in agriculture that happened during this time. Now, these changes happened in a variety of ways for different reasons. First off, there were some problems, and we know that farmers are going to migrate from the north around the Yellow River to the fertile basins of the Yangtze River in southern China. Now, the reason why they migrated further to the south is because in the north, there were some attacks happening from different groups who were on the borderlands. Now, the issue is that these northern farmers had mainly grown wheat, but wheat could not be grown in the south because the climate was so much different. So, my friends, they started growing rice. Rice, rice, baby. Ha ha ha. Now, this is going to become the most important crop in China, and farmers are going to use new technologies, including the iron plow and others, such as terrace farming, to meet the huge demand for rice. Now, let's talk about what terrace farming is. It's actually really beautiful looking. This is what it looks like, and it's a way where you take a hillside or a mountainside and you make it super productive for farming. You essentially cut in big stair steps. And on the part of the stair where you would put your foot, like the tread, that's where you actually create the farmland. And in this case, it would be rice paddies because rice is grown in a shallow water area. So now these mountainous, hilly areas that weren't going to be really useful for farming in the traditional sense can now have farmland all around the tops of these terraces, and that's going to make it a lot easier for farmers to grow what they need on whatever land they have, no matter if it is hilly or not. We're also going to see this later again in the Americas, particularly when we talk about the people of the Inca. So keep that in mind. This isn't the last time we'll talk about terrace farming. Now, let's talk about what the results of these agricultural changes were. First of all, this growing rice increased food production tremendously, and that means that they could basically take care and feed a larger population. Don't forget, stable food supply means that peasants can take time to do other things. They're going to be able to weave silk and create different cloths and make other products and do metalworking and all of these other parts of production and economic activity that they weren't able to do when they were all trying to just survive through farming. So rice is going to allow this economy to grow and allow the people to do even more than they thought. Now, these rice farmers are going to trade their surplus rice because they're producing more than they even need to survive. And what this means is the landowners are going to become very rich, and then they're going to want to buy luxury items. And these luxury items are going to be gotten through trade. So all of these changes are going to encourage the growth of trade in China. Now, let's talk about that. Another reason why this was such a prosperous time is because trade and business, or commerce, grew. It had started in the Tang Dynasty, but it really boomed during the Song. So let's go over the reasons. Some of them we just mentioned. Number one, wealthy landowners wanted luxury items. Luxury items are wants, not needs. They're just the things that you want to be able to show off your wealth. This increased demand for luxury items meant that more artisans were needed to create these luxury items. We also know that water transportation is going to also help business and trade go into much more an efficient way to make this travel a lot easier. This is going to mean that different networks of rivers and canals will connect different parts of China together, and these canals will be built so that different rivers like the Yellow and the Yangtze River would be connected. Now, let's talk about that. This is called the Grand Canal. It linked northern and southern China together so rice could be shipped more easily and cheaply. In addition, new innovations in navigation, like the magnetic compass, that's going to lead to more overseas trade. And as more overseas trade happens, the economy is going to grow, and China is going to end up having a cash money economy. This is literally an economy where people are going to buy and sell things with cash, with actual currency, not just through trade or barter. Paper money is going to be used, which is going to make the economy a lot more efficient. It's going to make it grow faster because instead of weighing out how much of something that you're going to give them, you can literally just give them the price that they're asking for. And this is going to lead to a revolution in the economy of China. Now let's pause for a second and take a look at some of the pictures of things we've been talking about. First off, here's a crazy map showing the Grand Canal. So the Grand Canal looks a little bit different today. But basically, this is Beijing, the current capital of China. And then this is Hangzhou, which is one of the earlier capitals. And you can see, here's the Yangtze River, here's the Yellow River. This canal connects those rivers together and also connects the northern part of China with the southern part of China. So, as you see here, we have one of those canals, and I showed you a picture where this was all dark and lit up, but these bridges are pretty tall in the middle so that barges and boats can go through, and some of these areas are quite beautiful. But this is really going to connect China together, and remember, 94% of the population is going to live in this part of China. Here we go. We have silk. We have the magnetic compass. Again, there's another picture of the Grand Canal, and we have Chinese paper money. So these are just some of those advancements. Now, the result of growth in trade and business means that the merchant class grew. This is sort of more of a middle class where you have people whose main business is buying and selling goods. They're really going to start to develop this kind of middle class economy that's going to make them wealthy and successful. We also know that business is going to bring increased prosperity to everyone in China and raise something called the standard of living to the highest in the world. What that means is standard of living is how well the people are living on average. So because business was so good and the prosperity of China really increased, even the poorest people in China were actually living better than the poorest people anywhere else in the world. In fact, this was the place to live in the Middle Ages. If you could live in the Song Dynasty, it would have been the most successful time and the best time for you to live compared to other places in the world. Now, we know that a lot of these commercial centers where all this buying and selling and trade happened grew into big cities. And that leads us to the new term that we're looking at here, which is urbanization. Urbanization increased in China. These cities grew and were the largest cities in the world. Catch this. Hangzhou had 2 million people living in it, while at the same time in Europe, there was only about 50,000 in their largest city. So this is night and day difference as far as the population. Now, the reasons that so many cities in China grew and developed was because the growth of trade and business encouraged people to actually leave the more rural areas and move into the cities for new opportunities. Also, it was an adventure. There was a lot more to see, a lot more to do in the city. There were opportunities that you would have there that you would have nowhere else. And this changed the way ordinary people in China lived. As cities grew, business grew, culture did as well, and we start to have a lot of change in this part of the world. But uh-oh. Oh no! The Mongols have invaded China! To be continued.